In the early 1990s, India's economic presence on the world stage was modest, often described in metaphors like the sleeping elephant. The country was still emerging from decades of protectionist policies, grappling with poverty, and heavily reliant on foreign aid and loans. At the same time, America's economy towered over the globe, not just in size, but in influence, setting the rules for trade, technology, and finance. The United States was the benchmark, the place others looked to for innovation, growth strategies, and the gold standard of capitalism. Fast forward to today, and the contrast is striking. India is no longer merely catching up, it is redefining the game. The sleeping elephant has not only woken up, but is running with a speed few predicted. And in some areas, it is moving faster than America itself. India is now the fifth largest economy in the world, having overtaken the United Kingdom, its former colonial ruler, and is on track to surpass both Germany and Japan in the coming years. What makes this rise particularly notable is the pace of growth. While America's GDP continues to expand steadily, India's growth rate consistently outpaces it, often more than doubling the U.S. percentage in recent years. This isn't just about raw numbers, it's about momentum. The global financial community is increasingly recognizing that the center of gravity in the world economy is shifting eastward, and India is one of the primary forces driving that shift. Part of this transformation comes from structural changes within India's economy. The liberalization reforms of the early 90s opened the door to foreign investment, streamlined industries, and unleashed the power of the private sector. Over the decades, India has built a vast network of entrepreneurs, tech innovators, and manufacturing hubs that are no longer just servicing global demand. They are shaping out TIA, American companies. Once the dominant investors in India now compete with Indian firms on the international stage, especially in sectors like pharmaceuticals, IT services, and renewable energy. Another crucial element is demographic advantage. India's population is young, ambitious, and increasingly skilled. While the U.S. and many developed nations face aging workforces, India enjoys a demographic dividend that fuels productivity and consumer spending. This creates a unique cycle. A massive domestic market attracts global businesses, which in turn create more jobs, innovations, and export opportunities. America, which once saw India primarily as a source of inexpensive labor, now sees it as one of the largest and most lucrative consumer markets in the world, a position the U.S. once exclusively held for itself. Furthermore, India's growing economic influence means it can negotiate trade deals, investment terms, and technology partnerships from a position of strength. In the past, the flow of capital, ideas, and policies was largely one way from America to India. Today, that flow is increasingly reciprocal, with America seeking investment opportunities, digital solutions, and strategic alliances from India. This reversal in dependency is a clear sign that the tables have indeed turned. America remains a powerhouse, but it no longer calls all the shots. India's rise has ensured that economic leadership in the 21st century will be shared, and the balance of influence is tilting in new, unexpected directions. For decades, America was the dream destination for India's brightest minds. Talented engineers, computer scientists, and doctors would leave their hometowns clutching student visas or job offers bound for Silicon Valley or top U.S. research universities. The United States benefited enormously from this influx of Indian talent, filling critical roles in its booming technology and healthcare sectors. It was a one-way talent pipeline. America gained innovators, coders, and CEOs, while India in many cases lost them to brain drain. That story, however, has been dramatically rewritten. Today, the relationship is no longer about one country taking and the other giving. It's about influence flowing in both directions, with India shaping the very institutions and companies that once drew its talent away. Many of those Indian professionals who moved to the U.S. have risen to the highest echelons of corporate power. Satya Nadella at Microsoft, Sundar Pichai at Google, Arvind Krishna at IBM. These are not just symbolic success stories. These leaders have transformed the culture and strategy of some of the world's most powerful tech companies, bringing a global inclusive perspective that reflects both American innovation and Indian resilience. Under their watch, U.S. tech giants have increased their presence in India, invested in local startups, and adapted their products to serve Indian markets, a reversal of the old model where India merely adapted to American products. Meanwhile, back home, the environment that once pushed ambitious Indians abroad has changed. India has cultivated a thriving tech ecosystem complete with billion-dollar startups, cutting-edge AI research, and digital infrastructure that in some areas surpasses the U.S. Systems like the Unified Payments Interface, UPI, have revolutionized transactions, making India one of the fastest-growing digital economies in the world. This means young talent no longer has to leave to work on world-class projects. They can do it in Bengaluru, Hyderabad, or Pune, often at a scale and speed that Silicon Valley envies. The result is a two-way street. Indian origin leaders in the U.S. are influencing American corporate strategy, often aligning it with Indian opportunities. At the same time, Indian companies and innovators are exporting ideas, tools, and even entire business models that American firms are eager to adopt. America's biggest tech corporations no longer just recruit from India. They actively collaborate with Indian universities, invest in Indian research labs, and set up development centers that handle critical global operations. What once looked like a talent drain now looks more like a talent loop, a cycle where knowledge, skills, and capital flow back and forth, enriching both nations. In some ways, India now sets the agenda. The U.S. may still offer higher salaries and prestige for certain roles, but it increasingly turns to India for leadership in digital innovation, market expansion strategies, and scalable technology solutions. The symbolic shift is undeniable. The pipeline no longer runs in one direction, and the balance of intellectual influence is far more equal, perhaps even tilting toward India in areas where its speed, adaptability, and youthful workforce give it a decisive edge. For much of the post-independence era, India's voice in global affairs was cautious, often reactive, and rarely in the headlines. In meetings of the United Nations or international summits, India tended to adopt a defensive posture focused on protecting its sovereignty and managing domestic challenges. The United States, by contrast, dominated the global stage, driving agendas and influencing alliances. In those days, Washington's stance on an issue often dictated the diplomatic climate, and countries like India were expected to adjust accordingly. But the dynamics have shifted. Today, India engages with the world from a position of growing strength, projecting a confidence that commands attention in Washington and beyond. This change is rooted in several factors. India's economic growth has enhanced its bargaining power, but is also about strategic geography, military modernization, and diplomatic agility. Positioned between the energy-rich Middle East and the dynamic economies of East Asia, India occupies a central role in the Indo-Pacific, a region increasingly recognized as the strategic heart of the 21st century. The U.S., once the undisputed security guarantor in this region, now sees India as an indispensable partner in maintaining balance, particularly in the face of China's rise. This partnership is not one-sided. India enters these conversations as a sovereign actor with its own priorities, not simply as a follower of American foreign policy. In recent years, India has demonstrated a remarkable ability to navigate complex global tensions without being pulled into binary choices. For example, during conflicts where Washington sought clear alignment, India maintained its independent stance, engaging with all parties while safeguarding its national interests. This is not neutrality born of weakness. It is strategic autonomy born of confidence. It signals to the world and to America that India will not be pressured into positions that undermine its economic security or energy needs. India's leadership on global issues like climate change, renewable energy, and disaster relief further cements this new standing. Initiatives such as the International Solar Alliance have brought together dozens of nations under Indian leadership, including several Western allies of the U.S. These are not token contributions. They are agenda-setting moves that shift the center of gravity in global policymaking toward New Delhi. America, which once saw itself as the default driver of such initiatives, now collaborates with India as an equal co-lead. Military cooperation also reflects this evolution. Joint exercises, intelligence sharing, and defense technology exchanges are at historic highs. Yet India remains careful to ensure these arrangements serve its broader strategic goals. The U.S. has come to accept that India will engage on its own terms, which in turn increases mutual respect. This is a far cry from the era when Washington might have viewed India as a secondary partner in global security architecture. In short, India's geopolitical confidence is no longer aspirational, it is operational. Its ability to influence outcomes without surrendering autonomy has altered the balance in its relationship with America. The tables have turned not because India has chosen confrontation, but because it has mastered the art of cooperation without dependency, and in doing so, it has redefined what partnership with a major power should look like. A generation ago, Indian culture was often viewed abroad as a colorful curiosity and admired in small pockets, but not woven into the everyday lives of people in America. Bollywood films might have been screened in select art house theaters. Yoga was practiced mainly by niche enthusiasts, and Indian food was something you tried on an adventurous weekend. American cultural exports, from Hollywood to pop music to fast food, dominated global trends, shaping tastes and setting the tone for what was considered modern or aspirational. That dynamic has shifted dramatically. Today, Indian cultural influence is not just visible in the United States. It is mainstream, shaping American habits, entertainment, and even values in ways that would have been unimaginable a few decades ago. Bollywood songs now make their way into global playlists, with tracks trending on platforms like Spotify and TikTok alongside American pop hits. Major streaming services, once focused primarily on American content, now invest heavily in Indian productions, recognizing their mass appeal across diverse audiences. A generation of Americans has grown up not just aware of Indian cinema, but actively engaging with it, appreciating its storytelling, music, and dance as part of the broader entertainment landscape. This is not cultural novelty, it is cultural adoption. Yoga, once viewed in the U.S. as an exotic spiritual practice, has become a multi-billion-dollar wellness industry that shapes fitness trends, mental health conversations, and lifestyle branding. While the commercial version in America has been adapted and sometimes stripped of its origins, the philosophical roots trace directly back to India. This has given India a subtle but profound influence on how millions of Americans approach health, mindfulness, and work-life balance. The concept of holistic well-being, rooted in Indian tradition, now sits comfortably alongside and in some cases replaces Western models of fitness. Cuisine has followed a similar path. Indian food is no longer confined to specialty restaurants in big cities. Dishes like tikka masala, dosa, and biryani appear on mainstream menus, and spices once considered too foreign are stocked in every major American grocery store. This culinary diffusion reflects not just changing tastes, but also a deeper cultural integration. Food is often a gateway to understanding and appreciating another culture, and through this everyday connection, India's presence in American life becomes personal and enduring. Beyond entertainment, wellness and food Indian festivals such as Diwali and Holi are celebrated in American schools, corporate offices, and public spaces. These events are not just for the Indian diaspora. They attract participants from all backgrounds, creating shared cultural experiences. This openness has created a feedback loop. As Americans embrace Indian traditions, American media and brands incorporate them further, amplifying their reach. What makes this shift significant is that cultural power often precedes political or economic influence. By embedding its traditions, aesthetics, and philosophies into the fabric of everyday American life, India has gained a form of soft power that subtly shapes perceptions and fosters goodwill. In a world where cultural narratives often define international relationships as much as trade agreements, India's growing role in America's cultural consciousness signals a reversal of the old one-way influence. America still exports its movies, music, and trends, but it now imports India's stories, flavors, and wisdom and integrates them into its own identity. For much of the late 20th century and early 2000s, technology leadership was synonymous with America. Silicon Valley set the pace for innovation, dictated global digital standards, and supplied the world with the most influential platforms and tools. Countries like India were often seen as consumers or low-cost service providers for that American-led ecosystem. Indian engineers wrote code for U.S. firms, supported global IT infrastructure, and helped scale products. But the intellectual property ownership and strategic control rested abroad. That model has changed. Over the last decade, India has steadily built the capacity to design, develop, and deploy advanced technology solutions on its own terms, creating systems so innovative that even the U.S. is looking to learn from them. A prime example is India's digital public infrastructure, particularly the Unified Payments Interface, UPI. Launched in 2016, UPI transformed financial transactions in India, enabling instant, seamless, and virtually free transfers between individuals and businesses. Adoption has been staggering, handling billions of transactions monthly, and its design has drawn praise from global economists and technology leaders, including in the U.S. While American payment systems still rely heavily on credit cards, bank intermediaries, and transaction fees, India's model is faster, cheaper, and more inclusive. Now, countries across the globe, including technologically advanced ones, are studying how to replicate aspects of it. This reversal, where America looks to India for digital infrastructure ideas, marks a significant turning point. India's commitment to technology independence extends beyond payments. The Aadhaar biometric identity system, despite debates about privacy, has given over 1 billion citizens secure digital identities that can be used for everything from opening bank accounts to accessing government benefits. This combination of identity payment and service delivery infrastructure, all built domestically, allows India to scale social and economic programs in ways the U.S. federal system has yet to match. American policymakers and think tanks increasingly reference India's India Stack as a model for digital governance. In parallel, India's startup ecosystem has matured into one of the most vibrant in the world. It is no longer just building software for foreign companies. It is creating homegrown products for global markets. In sectors such as renewable energy, electric mobility, health tech, and artificial intelligence, Indian innovators are producing solutions that compete directly with American offerings. This creates a new kind of relationship, one where American firms seek partnerships with Indian startups, not just outsourcing contracts. This technological self-reliance does not mean India has shut itself off from global collaboration. Rather, it approaches partnerships from a position of equality. When American companies enter India today, they adapt to its digital frameworks, comply with its data sovereignty rules, and often integrate with its public platforms instead of imposing their own. In the past, technological adoption flowed one way from America to India. Now, innovation flows both ways, and in key areas, India is leading. This shift not only reduces dependence on foreign systems, but also reshapes the perception of who drives technological progress. America remains a powerhouse, but it can no longer assume it alone defines the future of tech. India, through bold public infrastructure, agile startups, and a vision tailored to its scale, has claimed a seat at the table and in some cases is already setting the agenda. For decades, the India-America relationship was marked by a clear imbalance. The United States, with its economic dominance, technological leadership, and military reach, set the terms of engagement. India, though proud and dependent in its foreign policy, often had to calibrate its decisions based on U.S. positions, whether in trade negotiations, security cooperation, or global governance. Today, that equation has changed. While America remains a global superpower, India's rapid economic rise, technological innovation, demographic advantage, and growing geopolitical influence have transformed the relationship into something far more balanced, a partnership of equals. One of the most visible shifts lies in the tone of dialogue between the two nations. In the past, high-level talks often had an undercurrent of persuasion from Washington, as if convincing India to adopt certain policies was part of the process. Now, those same meetings are marked by mutual consultation. India no longer approaches the table seeking approval. It comes with its own well-defined agenda. Whether the subject is trade, defense procurement, climate policy, or regional security, New Delhi negotiates on the basis of its national interests, and Washington recognizes that these interests carry significant weight in shaping outcomes. The change is also evident in how both countries approach strategic challenges. Take the Indo-Pacific, for example. America sees India as an essential pillar in maintaining stability in this increasingly contested region. But unlike traditional alliances where one side follows the other's lead, this cooperation operates on parallel terms. India participates in initiatives like the Quad alongside the US, Japan, and Australia, but it does so without compromising its relationships with other powers, including those America views as rivals. This ability to engage in multi-alignment diplomacy demonstrates that India is not a junior partner, but it is a sovereign actor whose choices influence the strategic calculus of the US itself. Economically, the interdependence is deeper than ever before. American companies invest heavily in India, but they do so in recognition that India's domestic market, regulatory frameworks, and technology standards are shaped in New Delhi, not in Washington. Similarly, Indian companies from IT giants to pharmaceutical firms operate in the US not merely as service providers, but as innovators and job creators. The flow of capital, talent, and technology is no longer one way. It is a loop that benefits both economies, with India holding significant leverage in certain sectors. Culturally, the bond is strengthened by people-to-people connections. The Indian diaspora in the US is not only economically successful, but politically influential, shaping perceptions and policies in ways that make India's voice louder in American decision-making circles. This cultural and intellectual bridge reinforces the sense of mutual respect and shared values that underpin the partnership. What defines this new phase is not competition for dominance, but the recognition that global challenges, from climate change to cybersecurity to economic resilience, require cooperation between equals. The days when America could assume a position of unquestioned authority in this relationship are over. Today, India and the US sit across the table as partners who understand that their collaboration is most effective when grounded in respect, reciprocity, and shared ambition. The tables have turned, and now they stand level, sturdy enough to carry the weight of a shared future.